Whether it's your first time or your 50th, getting published is always a big deal for a writer. And a few weeks back, I was delighted to find out that a short story I wrote is getting published. I'm a novelist, I don't usually write short stories, so the process was a bit of a mystery to me and honestly really quite intimidating. But after getting some great advice and doing a lot of research, I actually managed to find a publisher for it pretty quickly. In this video, I'm going to share everything I learned about the process to help you get your short stories published. I'll include my views on why writing and publishing short stories is a great idea, where you can get your short stories published, how much you could get paid for them, and my top tips for avoiding the heartbreak of rejection. I really hope you enjoy the video. So for context, the story I'm getting published is called The Thing I Am. The premise is Godzilla from the monster's perspective, letting the reader experience all the monster's thoughts, feelings, and motivations as it rampages through the classic Kaiju movie plot beats. It's being published in an anthology of Kaiju stories and poems by Broken Sleep Books. It'll be out on the 30th of September, and there's a link to the book in the description below. All the profits go to charity, so do support it if you can. Most publishers won't be interested in publishing collections of your short stories until you're really established as a writer, because they're really difficult to market. So this kind of anthology is one of two main places you can get your short stories published. The other are literary journals or magazines, and what they have in common is that they tend to be very specific about what they're looking for. If you take a look at the submission call I responded to at Broken Sleep, you can see they really hammer home what they're looking for. Kaiju stories, not any other form of monster, horror, or sci-fi story. Most journals, including the big two sci-fi magazines, Asimov's and Analog, are also really specific about what they're looking for, even though they're part of the same media group and have very similar readerships. Analog is far more focused on scientific concepts, while Asimov's is looking for more character-driven stories in a sci-fi setting. And the reason I'm telling you this is that it drives your first big decision. Do you write the story you want to write and then try and find somewhere to place it? Or do you work out where you want to get published and then write a story to match its requirements? Personally, I don't usually write short stories. I wrote The Thing I Am because I had an idea I liked, and I wanted a creative outlet while suffering through editing my latest novel, which I'm still working on. That was great because I really enjoyed the freedom of just writing, but it did create some pain down the line, getting rejected by several journals, including Asimov's and Analog, who liked the story but didn't feel it fit what they were looking for. It all comes down to what you're trying to achieve with your short story. You might want to get published to prove you can, to make some cash or build your profile as a writer, which are all really good reasons to write short stories. And if that's the case, you might be better off taking the other route, picking some high-profile journals from your genre and writing stories which specifically target them. Whichever path you're going to take, though, you're going to need to identify the right publication for you at some point. You might already be aware of some of the big ones you could go to, but there's a huge selection of magazines and anthologies out there, many of which will pay similar rates to the big boys of between 3 and 8 cents per word, which means you could earn as much as $400 for a 5,000-word story, if you find the right one. A general Google search will turn up a lot of these publications, but there are also a few useful resources which collate them. Personally, I'm signed up to the Authors Publish mailing list because it's completely free and it puts lists of submission calls from publishers of short stories, poems, and novels in my inbox every week. I was surprised to find that even some very small niche publications pay quite well for short stories and poetry. The problem is almost that there are too many of these smaller publications, and you could spend your life writing submission letters. So my next top tip is to have some criteria for where you're going to submit, so you can focus in on the right ones for you. My criteria for The Thing I Am evolved over time as I got rejections and feedback, but by the end it was something like this. Submit only to publications which explicitly say they take kaiju or monster stories. Only submit to reputable publications and publishers, I don't want any negative associations which might undermine my novel getting published under the same pen name. Only submit to publications specifically seeking stories of around the same length, about 4,000 words, because many publications are now focused on microfiction of less than 1,000 words, and while they might theoretically take longer stories, the hit rate would be really low and create a time sink. In the end, I also decided to only submit to publications which accept parallel submissions. That means you can submit to more than one place at a time. I made that decision because I lost weeks waiting for one magazine, which only takes exclusive submissions, to reject me, and it really affected my motivation. My next tip is once you've found a publication you want to submit to, make sure you read their submission page in a lot of detail. They may have very specific instructions on how to submit your story, and if you don't follow them, it might get rejected automatically. That might include the format, for example, only accepting Word documents or PDFs. Broken Sleep said that they'd actually disqualify any submission which had an external link in it. They might ask for a short bio to go with the story, and that can be really important because they might publish that with it, and that's a really great chance for you to build your personal brand, so don't miss out on that. The other thing they might specify is how to format your manuscript, and a lot of editors will throw out submissions which are poorly formatted without even reading them. Some are vague about what they want, simply saying properly formatted. So my next tip is to check out William Shun's Guide to Manuscript Formatting. This is what the big two of Analog and Asimov's recommend using, and I found is generally accepted by most publishers for stories and longer form fiction. Sometimes you'll attach your manuscript to an email, but in other cases you'll be asked to upload them to a specialized platform where you can track your submission to see when it's been reviewed. Either way, you'll probably need to write some kind of cover letter, and this is where my final tip comes in. Make sure your cover letter is bespoke for every single submission, showing that you understand what the publisher's looking for and, if possible, offering a personal connection to them. It might be tempting to try and mass produce your submissions, copy-pasting the same generic cover letter over and over, but for both short stories and full-length novels, that way only rejection lies. You need to hook editors and agents from the very first line of both your story and your cover letter. A few things to try and include are a comparison to something they've published before. For example, early on, before I'd refine my rules for who I submitted to, I gave Asimov's a try. I knew deep down it wasn't a good fit, but I remembered a story I had previously read in their journal, which had some similarities to mine, being written from the perspective of something very not human. In the very first paragraph of my submission, I told the editor that this story was why I was submitting the thing I am to them, and I very quickly got a very personalized letter back. Yeah, it was a rejection, but it gave me some really great positive feedback, which helped me refine my submission strategy and specifically talked about the comparison I'd made. The other thing I'd really recommend including in your submission letters is anything which improves the marketability of your stories. Are you an expert in a field related to your story? A murder mystery written by a real-life homicide detective is intrinsically more marketable. Do you have a social media presence and will you use it to promote the story when it's published? I now always mention this YouTube channel. Are you already a published author with your own readership? If you don't have any of the above, don't worry. Try briefly explaining why getting the story published is important to you on a personal level. I had no shame in letting editors know I was new to short story writing and how much it would mean to me to get the thing I am into their publication. Using these strategies, I got the thing I am published in just 5 submissions. That's faster than I was expecting, and if I can do it, you can too. Going through the process of getting a short story published is a great way of learning the publication process before you tackle trying to get a full-length novel published. Submitting your 70,000, 80,000, 100,000 word manuscript, which you've worked for years on, is nerve-wracking. In the case of sci-fi, there are only 14 agencies in the whole of the UK which take submissions in the genre, so every rejection is a massive blow and one step closer to 2 or 3 years' work going in the bin. Getting good at pitching your work is almost as important as getting good at the writing if you want to get published. Once again, if you do want to check out The Thing I Am, it's out on the 30th of September through Broken Sleep Books, link below, and all proceeds go to charity. I won't get a penny. This video is focused on the process of getting short stories published, but if you'd like a video about how I wrote The Thing I Am and my approach to writing short stories going forwards, then let me know in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe, and until next time, keep writing.